Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Becca if you're new here. I'm so excited because I'm going to be sharing my birth story. And I know that when I was pregnant with both my first and my second, I loved consuming birth stories. And so I just wanted to share mine because what am I doing? I just wanted to share mine because it was such a positive experience and it was just like a whirlwind and I loved it. And so yeah, here we go. So I had my birth vlog come out a couple weeks ago. And that's just kind of like the raw footage of how it all went down. You're not able to talk and share all of your thoughts and what's really happening and everything in the birth vlog because there's a lot going on. So yeah, I really like actually sitting down and telling the story. So here we go. Baby Clara is asleep right now. I'm sure she'll wake up any second and then you can see her. 2 seconds of recapping how my first birth went. From my first contraction all the way to when I pushed him out, it was 36 hours. Insanely long, exhausting, and tiring. I still loved that birth, but my one big wish for this one was just that it would go so much faster, and it did. Launching right into this, I had an appointment at 11 o'clock that morning for my midwife to do a stretch and sweep. I didn't really think anything would come of it because I talked to some people that have had babies and they're like, oh, I had stretch and sweeps with all 3 of my kids and that never put me into labor. And so I was like, okay, I'll just go and try it, whatever. I've never had one before. So I went in, she did it, and then we actually drove out to Piha, which is a beach here in New Zealand that's 40 minutes drive in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, it's fine, I won't go into labor, and even if I do, it'll be long enough. It's perfectly fine. And so we drove all the way out there, and the whole time I'm having these period cramps, which is totally normal. It's to be expected with a stretch and sweep. And the whole time I'm like, it'll fizzle out, it'll turn into nothing. But they progressively got stronger and stronger, and I was like, Mom, I don't want to make a big deal out of this. I don't know what this is yet. And so I was sitting on the beach. It was such a stormy day too, and my husband went out to swim in the ocean, and it's not a very good ocean to swim in. It's really rough, and people die there. And I'm just sitting there holding my toddler, and I'm like, if I go into true labor here, my husband's gonna be swept out into the sea. I'm gonna, whatever. And the wind was so strong, it kept picking up the sand and sandblasting my toddler, and so he just wanted to snuggle with me. It was actually really sweet, but they're getting stronger and stronger, and I'm like, oh, I think we should start heading back. And so I convinced my husband it's time to go. So we get some ice cream first, important. And then we get into the car and start driving back somewhere right around 3 o'clock. I think it was 3:10. And at that point, mentally, I started calling them contractions. And Billy, the whole time, was like, oh, what's going on? Is stuff happening? I'm like, oh, it's probably nothing. It's no big deal. They'll probably go away once I relax at home and everything. So we go home right around 4, and that's when I start timing the contractions, which is another big deal for me because for me to start timing the contractions on my little app, it means I'm taking myself seriously, which I don't want to do. And so I start timing them, and I'm like, man, these are kind of intense. And I'm sitting there trying to remember back from William's labor, and the whole time I'm like, am I misremembering this? Because I had a full 24 hours of these kind of painful but kind of really manageable contractions, and it just lasted for so long. So I was kind of expecting that same thing. And so for them to ramp up that quickly, I was like, I'm being a baby. I'm misremembering this. I have so much more pain to go through, whatever. And so for quite a while, I have William climbing all over me, jumping all over, because I'm sitting in my ball and he loves bouncing on the ball with me. I'm going through all these kind of intense contractions, and I'm like, I think we need to change some things here. It wasn't until 6:30 that I called my midwife and was like, hey, just to give you a heads up, I don't know, this could be a false alarm, but yeah, I've been having these kind of stuff happening since the stretch and sweep, so just a heads up. And at that point she asked oh, how intense are they? And I'm like, they're fine, even though they were pretty intense. But I'm the kind of person that will horribly roll my ankle and it's swollen to 3 times the size, and I will continue walking and not tell anybody about it. I just like suffering in silence. It's a really great trait that I have. Anyways, so I hang up with her, and at that point I'm like, I think we need to make a move. And so at that point I'm telling Billy we need to finish packing up the hospital bag with the little last bits and bobs, and then we need to have our friend come over and pick up William. But also at this point I wasn't wanting to move very much, so I was sitting on my ball trying to get through these contractions, and I was just relying on Billy to finish up everything. So another hour goes by. It's 7:30 and I call the midwife. Everything's taken care of, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to go in now. And the whole time I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so embarrassing. I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna be 2 centimeters, I'm gonna have such a long way to go. whatever. I feel like I will feel better if I just get there. And so, yeah, I call her up, and I love my midwife so much. I just want to be her best friend. But one of my favorite things about her is just that she is like so confident about what you're going through. So like if I'm telling her my contractions are pretty intense, she's not like, oh, well, you sound like you can still talk through them, you know, stay at home a little bit longer. It's like, oh no, let's go time. I'll meet you there. She's just so trusting of my judgment. Anyways, so we drive over to birth care, and we actually pull in at the same time that she does. And so I get out of the car, and she watches me have a contraction, and she's like, yeah, it's time to go up. And so we go take the elevator, get into the room. So at this point it is 8 o'clock, like right on the dot. And I sit on the couch thing, and then she listens to the baby's heartbeat. It sounds great. And then she checks to see how dilated I am. And she's like, oh yeah, you're like 5 to 6 centimeters. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have so much time left. Because it took me a long time to get to like 7 centimeters with William. Let me settle in. We're in this for a while. But I sat there for 2, maybe 3 contractions when I started to feel kind of pushy. And I was like, that seems really fast. And so at that point, the water had been filling up in the tub this whole time. And I was like, is it okay if I get into the water? Like, I don't want to get in too early because I know that can stall out labor and everything. She's like, no, you're fine to get in. Later, she told me that when she checked me, she was actually think I was like 7 centimeters, but she said she likes to tell people a little bit smaller numbers so you don't get your hopes up and like tell yourself a timeline. So I climb into the water, and at this point it's so funny because Billy hits record on the camera, and from when I get into the water to when I have my baby, it's like not even 10 minutes long. Like, it was so fast. It was so crazy. I had 3 or like 4 contractions in the water. Like, I didn't even have time to even think about wanting an epidural. Not that I wanted one in the first place, but like that's how crazy fast it happened. Because with William, I did ask her one at the end because it had been so long, so tiring. And I talked to my midwife and I was like, I can't do this for much longer. And she's like, well, the only other option you have is an epidural. And so I ordered one. And then he came really fast after that, so I couldn't get it. But, oh, I hear somebody. Let me go get her. Look at how cute. Oh, very nice. Oh, you can do a stretch. Big stretch. Hi. Look at how beautiful. I'm just so in love. It's also so fun to me because I can fit into my old clothes again. Look at this. This shirt was comically short with my giant pregnant belly when she was in here a week ago. That's another crazy thing about having the baby. It's like they come out and immediately you're like, how did you fit in there? Like, you're so big. Yeah. The last like 3 to 4 contractions, I pushed her out. 10 minutes. Absolutely like mind-blowing. Every time I think about it still to this day, a week later, I'm just like, how did that happen that fast? It's funny because with the like 3rd to last contraction, it started and I remember trying to get out the sentence like, what if I don't want to do this? But I couldn't even get it out all the way because the contraction came and it was so strong and I couldn't talk at all. At that point, there's nothing to do but do it. So it's also funny to me though, because the same thing happened with her and with William. The moment that the head came out, the water broke. That's the most painful part to me. Like, that's when I jump up screaming. and both times I'm like, oh, the water just broke. And they're like, no, the head is out. And then this one was so crazy because her head was out, and then the midwife looked and was like, oh, she's crying already. And I'm like, oh, what? Come on, baby. Like, I just want to have the next contraction get you out and be done. But the next contraction wasn't happening fast enough for me. And then it was like all of a sudden she cried out loud. It was so crazy. Instantaneously, I had this super strong contraction and she just like rocketed out. It was beautiful. How do you accurately portray having a baby? Because it's like she came out and it's so overwhelming in every single way. Like, you're just so happy. You feel so good all of a sudden. You're happy to be done. And then you're holding this whole human. And for me, I always feel like I don't really connect with my baby when they're in the womb as much. Like, I do. But it's not super strong until I'm holding them. And then all of a sudden it's like this flood of like, oh, you're real. You're here. And I love you so much. So absolute insanity. So after a few minutes sitting in the water, I was like, okay, I'm ready to get out and like lay down. And then hopped out. had the placenta. And then I actually ended up with a 2nd-degree tear, which I was a little bummed about because I always kind of hear that with the subsequent births you have less tear. With William I had a 1st-degree, so this one was actually a little bit worse. Whatever, I think that's because she popped out so fast. Like, I've also heard that having a water birth helps with tearing, but I think I was in the water for such a short amount of time it didn't have like any effect. Yeah, so I had the placenta, got a tour of the placenta, got all stitched up and showered and good to go. And yeah, this little angel baby, she breastfed right away. I don't know, it was just such like a perfect birth. I say that now after a week. Right after having her, I was like, I don't want to do this again. That's what everybody says. That's basically it. Like, it just happened so fast. I remember with William's birth, I have like this whole long story because it just lasted so long. And there were like so many details to it. And this one's like, boom, boom, boom. And then she's here. Had her. Done. Love it. Love that for me. Yeah, I hope that if you're having your 2nd and you had a long 1st one, there's a little bit of hope now for you that it will go a bit faster. Anyways, that's it. That's the whole story. It's so short. But I loved it, and I'm so glad she's here, and she's so beautiful and perfect. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!